Hello, one person, two people, a few more, let's wait. I'm not in my usual place. Everything got messed about this morning because I walked through my forest. It's Brian of London. I'm in Tel Aviv. This is the Namal, the port of Tel Aviv. I'm going to walk through this. It's going to be crowded. I walked through the forest this morning like I normally do, but I kept going and I went to a hotel on the beach to meet some people. Very, very interesting person. Maybe I'll talk about it later, but I did a long audio post last night about Dhimmitude and Tommy Robinson and the British Army, and I just saw Tommy went live a couple of minutes ago again. His petition is at 150,000, but it's being blocked by ISPs in the UK. This is the petition just basically standing up for soldiers who are being persecuted for taking a photo with Tommy. And I see there's lots of pictures showing up now, all saying, I am Soldier X. Soldier X is this soldier who we understand is going to get drummed out of the army for being in a picture with Tommy. Hopefully there'll be even some pictures from the IDF. You never know. We'll see if those are going to come. And I tell you, we're learning something amazing about Britain and the Dhimmitude. Dhimmitude. I keep saying this word. I keep explaining this concept. I'm not going to stop because I think it's such an absolutely clear example. Why would the British Army be so scared of Tommy Robinson? Why? And the only reasonable answer is Dhimmitude. So, like last night, BBC Newsnight did a 12-minute hit piece, and I think that was followed by a discussion in the studio with Guardian journalists, all stating that they know what Tommy Robinson's views are, but they don't invite Tommy Robinson on. And a 12-minute hit piece. And the thrust of the hit piece was, he's just jumped on this bandwagon of talking about child sexual exploitation or grooming gangs or Muslim rape gangs, as some of us call them. He's just jumped on this bandwagon and he didn't do anything to expose it. Well, at some point, so much work to do. Drop me a line at Patreon if you want to help me out with that work, because the work that needs to be done is someone needs to take that BBC Newsnight piece and drop in two things. One, drop in Tommy Robinson's interview with Paxman from years ago, where he talked about child sexual exploitation, and also drop in the clip that I've got on my computer at home, and it's on the web, of Andrew Norfolk, who is the journalist credited with doing the first major piece on child sexual exploitation. I'm going to go a different way because it's too crowded. Andrew Norfolk saying at a conference out loud to a whole audience that if it hadn't been for the EDL marching up and down the UK, he wouldn't have looked through his notes because he knew something was going on, but he hadn't connected the dots publicly. He knew something was going on, and it was the EDL showing up in town after town after town. And there's no accident to it. Go look at the YouTube videos, go look at the records. The EDL showed up in towns that went on to have been proved to have huge Muslim rape gang problems. Okay, it was not an accident. The people in the EDL at the grassroots level, and I know this because I was reading their forums, the people in the EDL at the grassroots level, they all knew about rape gangs long before Andrew Norfolk wrote about it. And Tommy knew about rape gangs. They were not foremost in his mind when he did the protest against Al-Mujahirun shouting at the soldiers, but it quickly became apparent that the two biggest problems in the UK connected with Islam were, the number one is Muslim rape gangs. Number two is people like Al-Mujahirun as a conveyor belt towards jihad and violent jihad. But the bit that's touched more lives than anything else is the rape gangs. Millions, maybe 1 million victims. And if there are 1 million victims, as I keep saying, there are always more perpetrators than victims in this crime. And when 1,400 girls in Rotherham are written in the report, how many people went to prison? 30? 40? And nobody from the councils, nobody from the police, nobody from positions of authority who knew that this was going on, no one from the children's homes, nobody like that was prosecuted or has been prosecuted or recommended for prosecution. Tommy talked about all of this, and the EDL spoke about this long before Andrew Norfolk. People will say that the BNP did too. I agree. BNP were on this case too. The trouble was the BNP came at it from a race-based background. Pakistani, Bangladeshi. They talked in race, they talked in skin colour. EDL never did that. EDL under Tommy was not racist. They knew that the problem was ideological. Ideology. You can choose to be part of an ideology. You can choose how you express your Islam. If you pick the bits of Islam that say you can take kafir girls to be sex slaves, that is a huge problem if you're trying to live amongst normal people. And that's what they do. That's what they did. That's what they're still doing. Tommy brought attention to that, and the EDL did that in the non-racist way. The EDL was never far right in that aspect. That's why they had a gay division. That's why they had a Jewish division. That's why they had people like me looking carefully at who was there and what they were expressing in public and the speeches that were being given and telling it like it is. I saw who they were. I got it. But the BBC and Sky News and Guardian and everybody to this day call them far right, call Tommy far right. It's bullshit. That's why. BBC ran a 12-minute hit piece last night on Newsnight. What does that mean? That means Tommy is succeeding beyond anybody's wildest dreams. Because if he wasn't succeeding, they wouldn't be running that piece. Because they know that it's a balancing act for the BBC. And they're losing. I tell you, they're losing. The balancing act is we ignore this guy or we do hit pieces. Now, each time they choose to do a hit piece instead of ignore, it means that they're acknowledging that he has got growing power. And each time they do a hit piece, all it takes is one person to watch 5 minutes of Tommy's next Facebook Live video, and they'll hear him talking. And if they're from any kind of background that's not elite and privileged and far left and Corbynista, they'll listen to him and they'll think, why the hell are soldiers being persecuted for taking a selfie with this man? And they'll look, maybe they'll watch one of his old speeches, because you can't find the speech online where Tommy says something racist or something violently offensive if you're a normal thinking person. Now, if you think Islam cannot be criticised, yeah, Tommy's stuff might offend you. If you think that we should all walk through life as dhimmis, treading on eggshells, being very, very careful not to insult their prophet Muhammad, their false prophet Muhammad, as I'll call him, because Muhammad went to the Jews around him and he said, hey, I'm a new prophet. I'm here to tell you how to be Jewish better, to improve you. And the Jews of the area said, fuck you. And sorry for the swearing, but that's what they told him to piss off. And this, later on, when he turned into Warlord Muhammad, because that happened to him in his early days when he was trying to be peaceful Muhammad and persuade people by peaceful persuasion. When he failed at that, he went off and became Warlord Muhammad. And what did Warlord Muhammad do? He came back and he started killing people. And he killed lots of Jews. He killed lots of other people. And he expelled all the Jews from Arabia. He expelled them. He said this entire area is going to be Muslim. And he expelled Jews and he expelled Christians. And he literally made Arabia a Muslim supremacist area. That's what they did. Exactly like what you say the white supremacists want. They want their all-white country. That is what Muhammad did with Arabia. He created an Islamic land where you could only be Muslim. That was the Now, as the empire expanded, what they found was that Muslims were not productive enough to hold land and to be good, to create a civilization. So they took over other civilizations. And each time they did that, they offered the people there, if they were Jews or Christians, it's a bit more complicated in India, but if they were Jews or Christians, they offered them a treaty called the Dhimma. And if they accepted this treaty, and the treaty offer was basically death, conversion, or economic slavery. And economic slavery is dhimmitude. Now, they didn't actually want conversion in the early days. They needed a population to remain largely non-Muslims. So it was always a Muslim minority ruling a non-Muslim majority who were economic slaves. They were enslaved to Islam. They could not criticize Islam. They could not ride a horse. They could not build buildings higher than the mosque. They couldn't repair, they couldn't build new churches. Sometimes they could repair them if they were allowed. They had to wear different clothes. This is all the conditions of dhimmitude. And then what they would do is, they were geniuses, the Muslims. Geniuses, what they would do is they would set dhimmi populations against each other. They would organize for the Jews and the Christians to always be fighting each other under the Muslims in order to be perceived and felt to get ahead in the eyes of the Muslim overlords. But this entire period of history has been called a golden age. It was nothing of the sort. Sometimes you got a benevolent leader, a benevolent Muslim dictator. When you got that, yeah, life could be okay for a while. But it could change at a whim. I was just actually hearing from a scholar today, that was at the meeting today, of the father of the current king of Morocco was a notorious womanizer. He loved Jewish women. And he would just pick them, say, bring her to me. And she would be brought to him, and he would rape her. But of course, it was the king, so it's not rape if it's a king doing it, apparently. And that was it. And in fact, this chap I know very well who told this story to me now, he even knows the grandson of one of these, the king of Morocco, screwing. And so this guy he knows is actually technically a second cousin to the current king. That was going on for centuries all across the Muslim world, but we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. And by not talking about it, in order to save the feelings of Muslims, we do a massive disservice to history, to truth, and to everything about our civilization that we value. I don't care about the bad histories. I listened yesterday briefly to a LBC whining about the colonialism and the horrors of colonialism. I mean, the biggest thing that the British did for slavery was to abolish slavery. They abolished it, and then they used their massive power of their navy to worldwide abolish slavery. That's the achievement of Britain and slavery. Everybody has had slaves. Almost every civilization that's ever come up from man has had slaves. But only the Judeo-Christian, the power of Jewish philosophy brought forward into Christianity was to say, all men are created in the image of God, all men are equal. How can we live with ourselves if we do this slavery thing? And eventually slavery was stamped out in Judeo-Christian thinking. We just don't do it anymore, and we realize it's wrong. That's the achievement of the civilization I come from. I mean, yes, there was slavery, but we stopped it. There is still slavery today in Islam. I mean, they don't call it that, but they would be doing it if we were not here to stop them. And the rape gangs in Britain are child sex slavery. These children are products. They are sold. They might even be sold to white clients. That's the other thing. But that's not part of the ideology of the business that drives child sexual exploitation. Again, Tommy knows all of this. I know all of this. Peter McLaughlin, who wrote the book Easy Meat, he knows all of this. Of course, it's no accident that Tommy and Peter are co-authors on Muhammad's Quran. All of this sprung out of the EDL, which was not far right. It was just right. Anyway, I'm Brian of London. I'm not sitting, I'm walking. I'm getting out of breath. This is the beautiful Tel Aviv Park Hayakon I've been walking through. And I'll be back the next time I can do this. I'll just give you some front camera for a bit. Remember me, Brian of London. Go to my Patreon if you think I should be doing even more work on cutting up videos of the BBC and showing what the truth is. Oh yeah, YouTube demonetized me. I mean, I knew it would happen at some point, but they said that, there's no way. I mean, it wasn't huge. It wasn't my income. It was just a nice affirmation that at least something was valued, but not by them. Anyway, let's turn the camera around, give you some beautiful pictures of the rowing centre, and then I'll go.